Thank you for the organization of this event. So I'm going to follow up on what Andreas said, and I'm going to talk about some of the European projects that we are developing in my lab in Belgium at the University of Mons. So I'm going to mainly talk about Spring and Orbit, but I'm going to also mention the other European project going on. They are all more or less dealing with pollinator monitoring. So I will present a bit of background regarding the pollinators and the link with nature restoration law, and then I will talk about the challenge of the implementation of a monitoring scheme at the continental level. So one of the first challenges when you monitor invertebrate and special insects and bees, it's the number of species that you have to deal with. Here it's just a few numbers at the European level. Europe Sensu IUCN, so it's not exactly the same than geographical Europe, and it's more than EU 27. So just to show that there are a lot of bees, more than 2,000 species, a lot of sylphid flies, much less butterflies, and then you compare to the aquatic plants. If you sum, for example, all the bottom, you don't reach the bee. And so it brings problems in the quantity of data, but also in terms of expertise in taxonomy. So we are working on this, and in Europe, compared to the rest of the world, we are still lucky. We have a long tradition of the study of bees. So we know more or less where they are. We are still describing new species for science in Europe, but we know more or less the fauna. So there is a clear gradient north-south in terms of diversity, and the peak of diversity for bees is in Mediterranean climates. So if you go more south in the tropics, you will have less bees. We have 20% of endemics in Europe. And of course, you have also a gradient of knowledge that is also north-south. So in the south, you have more species, but you have also much less knowledge because, again, about history. So we have red lists at the European level for the three groups of insect pollinators. So this one was published very recently, and you see that a high proportion of sylphid flies are threatened, and among the three groups, it's probably the one that is the most threatened. So for the butterfly, it's a bit old now. It's 9%, the same for the bees, but for bees and butterfly, we are working on a reassessment that will be published this year or next year, again at the European level. But it will be more or less the same, around 10% red listed at continental level. But now if we focus at national level, and so we mentioned this morning the red list for Switzerland. Here you have the red list for Belgium. It's a very similar result. So at this level, we have extinction. So some species were recorded in the country but disappeared. At the continental level, we don't have yet extinction, which is a good news. We lost nothing at the continental level. But for some countries like Belgium, where all the threats that we will mention right after are really high, we already lost a part of the diversity. So almost half of the species are threatened, and some of bees are more threatened than others. In Belgium, particularly bumblebees. They are more cold-adapted group, and so they are suffering much more from climate change, for example. While actually in Belgium, we have sometimes new species because there are species coming from the south. So for some species, climate change is a good thing in Belgium. So the main threats for the bee decline are the one that we mentioned already, associated to global changes. So intensification of agricultural practices, of course, climate change, pollution, urbanization. But what we know also is that even the common species, for the species that we have enough data, we see that there is a negative population trend. So even if they are not threatened, according to the IUCN criteria, they are still declining. And here again, for the bumblebees, which is a group quite important for plant pollination in the north part of Europe, here we did some projection with the distribution and regarding the climatic projection. And even the very common species nowadays, like Bombus pascorum, will have like a significant reduction of their distribution. So probably regarding bumblebees, you are just at the beginning of the decline. We might lose, like for sure, a significant portion of the bumblebees in the next century, unfortunately. Now we are talking a lot about pollinators. Bees are quite popular, butterflies also. So we may ask the question, okay, bees are declining. Everybody knows. I think that if you ask in the streets, most of the people are aware that there is a problem with bees. But actually, when we compare bees to other groups, I will not say that they are fine, but they are by far not the worst, because bees can also adapt to some species, at least, can adapt to disturbed lands, like in the cities. And so when you compare bees to birds or aquatic freshwater mollusks, for example, bees are by far not the worst. So like Andreas mentioned, in Europe, I think that we are quite lucky. At least this commission is fully aware of this problematic, and there are a lot of information given by the scientific community. And so there are some key numbers that they are there, and based on this, was proposed the nature restoration law, and pollinators. It's a part of this law. Hopefully, it will be voted by the European Council sooner or later. And again, even if in Europe we have a lot of problems, I think that we can still be proud that we are the first continent having this kind of body of legislation to protect nature. And so we have a goal for pollinators to reverse pollinator decline by 2030. And so for that, of course, if you want to achieve this goal, we need to have the capacities to achieve this goal, even if the goals are implemented at the member state level. We need capacities, and these capacities can be developed at European level. And so it's in this framework that we have implementation of some preparatory work to have the capacities to implement this monitoring scheme of pollinator. So of course we need standardized methods, we need people, we need data, and after all we will need action and of course evaluate the efficiency of these actions. So Emmanuelle showed already this slide that shows from this expert report how some projects were developed. The Spring project focusing more on the methods. So it's a pilot project. I will talk right after about this, and training. And Orbit and Taxofly focusing more on the data, on the taxonomic capacities. But they are not the only three projects. There are also a lot of other European projects funded by Biodiversa program or Horizon program, or also DG Environment, that will already use the data that we are producing to analyze population trends. And of course, this consortia will also use this data when they will come from the monitoring program. So I will just focus on these two projects. That for Orbit, I was the coordinator of the project, and Spring, we were members and developing the the training and the monitoring for Belgium. And I will briefly present the other project going on pollinators. So Orbit, like I said, it's a project that aims to increase the capacities regarding taxonomy of bees. So we are, again, not starting from zero. In Europe, like I said, we have a long tradition of studies of bees, and we have some books. So I put a bit of publicity of my book on the European bees. And of course, there are some keys also, not always in English. We have all the language of Europe. A lot of keys are actually in German. These keys are more or less at broad geographical framework. You have keys that they are for the continent, but most of the time these keys are for a country or a region. So here you have a few examples of keys for UK, for Netherlands, and for Germany. Here it's some of the data, a table where you have like the data on the number of the species for each genera of bees, and the references for the keys more or less developed. But so one of the goals of the Orbit was to put all this information together in one platform that will be hosted by DG Environment. And in this platform, we will have this kind of fact sheet where we will have all the information regarding the diagnosis at the lab level, at the field level, the distribution, the conservation, the ecology, and the IUCN category, and when it's available, the barcodes. So at the end of this year, when the platform will be ready, we will upload all this information, and in one place you will have all the information for all the bees, which is, again, unfortunately, not yet available. So we hope that it will improve this kind of current analysis, where on the top you have the number of species for the main genera of Europe, and you see Apis. Apis mellifera is just one species. And on the bottom, you have the numbers of publications related to this group. And so you see that obviously there is a big bias in the study of European bees towards Apis mellifera. Of course, it's a domesticated species. But still, when you have a genus like Andrena that is more than 400 species recorded in Europe, we have a very few papers published in this genus. So we hope that the Orbit deliverables will help to improve this. In 20 years, we will have another result for these publications. So the second project is the Spring project. And so in the Spring project, there were two main goals. They were the test of different methods to monitor the pollinators, and we tested pen traps, so triplets of pen traps, 3 colors, and transects, done by people more or less experienced. And a second big goal was organized training, again from basic level to advanced level. So every European countries were covered by this project, and they were clustered more or less by biogeographical area to be more efficient regarding the training, regarding the fauna. So these countries share more or less the same fauna, and also sometimes they have the same language also. So Europe was divided, EU27 was divided in 7 regions, with France being the fourth one. So in Mons, we organized the advanced training. The advanced training is a level of training where you aim to determine the species level, which is, of course, the most challenging one. So we organize 4 sessions with trainees that we hope that they will be the future of bee taxonomy, I would say, or at least parataxonomy. So people from each EU country that might in the future participate to the monitoring of the bees. Again, with this big question of shifting from a project-based organization to institution-based organization, and hoping that these people, to some extent, will have permanent position, young and gender-balanced people, that will make a full career to follow and monitor these bees. So we target with these criteria some trainees, and we connected them with alpha taxonomists to train them a maximum at the species level determination. So we started to develop some contents like this. So for example, again, for bees, we still don't have full keys for every regions. So in botany, you have this flora, and I don't know if in Europe we have a flora for all the countries. But anyway, this is the base. We need dichotomic keys to determine the species. So we developed some of them in the Spring framework, some PowerPoints, and also one of important point in entomology is reference collection. And we share specimens from reference collection with the trainees. In the Spring framework, we also updated the checklist of the European bees, which was not an easy task. We had also to unify, which was not necessarily the case, the community of taxonomists that are used to work more individually. And so now we are creating, and it starts to be solid, this team of taxonomists. And so we do joint publication and be sure that everybody is acknowledged. And also what we did is after the publication of this updated checklist, we also updated the country records. So for every European countries, we have now a checklist for the bees, and we joined the effort with the CIRFID community. And for many countries, it was actually the first checklist for their country. Like I said, regarding the other projects, one of the other project is named Pulse. It's the reassessment of European red lists. This is the result for the first one. So you see that one of the big results is that 57% of the species have been assessed data deficient. And I don't want to be a spoiler, but we reduced the level to 10-15% of species data deficient for Europe. So with this reassessment, we really decrease significantly this data deficient percentage. And just a quick mention also on this project, Wild Posh, that I'm a coordinator, and the sister project Pollinator, where we monitor the impact of pesticides on wild pollinator, because again, in the literature, most of the data are about the impact of pesticide on honeybees, and we know really very little on the impact of pesticide on the wild species, and especially on the syrphid and butterfly. We don't know, I mean, this is always the challenge. We know that it's bad, but how bad it is. But obviously, the insecticide will kill butterfly and syrphid fly. This we know already. And so this is the consortium for this Wild Posh project. But again, we will produce new data regarding sensitivity, exposure of wild pollinators to pesticides, and the same then with the monitoring. Ultimately, we aim to have an impact on the policy and change legislation regarding pesticide use at the European level. So this is my presentation. Thank you.